create a scatter plot for your Beers Law Lab in Google Sheets. You will need two columns with your data. The first column is going to be concentration values in moles per liter, and the second column is going to be your absorbance values. Now, the numbers that I have on the screen here are just placeholders to show you the process of making the graph, and your values will be different from what I have on screen here. I will just point out that I am entering in values with scientific notation using a capital E. So the number 1 times 10 to the minus 3 is shown as 1.00, capital E minus 3 here. To start the process to make the graph, I'm going to select my set of values. So I'm going to go ahead and select all 8 numbers here. And once I've selected them, I go to Insert and Chart. And you can see the default chart is a column chart, which is not what I want. So I'm going to change the chart type to scatter. And once I have a scatter plot, I'm going to the Customize option. And I'm going to need to add in my X and Y axis titles. So I'll click on this box and type in my horizontal axis title, which is going to be concentration, and it has the units moles per liter. And I will just bold it to make it easier to read. I'll add in my vertical axis title as absorbance. And if I knew the wavelength that this absorbance was taken at, I would put that in there. So for example, if it happened to be 520 nanometers, I would put that number. You should use your appropriate number. And I will also bold that to make it stand out a little more. All right, so I have my X and Y axis titles in. So I'm going to minimize that option. I'm going to Series next. And what I want to do is get a trend line. So I'm going to click that. And I want a linear trend line, so I don't need to change that. But what I want is the equation. So under Label, I'll say Use Equation, and I also want to see the R-squared value. And you'll notice my R-squared is very high because it's made up data. So ideally, you would see an R-squared value of 0.99 or higher. All right, so once we have our equation of the line, we can go ahead and minimize this block. And the next thing I'm going to do is just play with the formatting of the grid lines and the axis. So I'm going to vertical axis, and I'm going to ask it to show the axis line. I'm going to minimize that now. I'm going to go to grid lines next. And what I'm going to do is change the color of my grid lines. So I'm just going to turn them white so I'm not distracted by the lines anymore. And for my vertical axis, I'll do the same thing. I'm going to change the grid line color to white. All right, so there we have it. This is our scatter plot. It has our axis labels in there. It has an equation of the trend line and no distracting grid lines.